Thank you, Manu. As requested by you, I will start with the 5 minutes of guided meditation. And I'd just like to say that the meditation instructions I will be giving you for the next few minutes are based on what I have learned from many renowned meditation masters, starting with Venerable Pomagama Kondanja, then Venerable Venerable Dhammajiva, then Ajahn Brahmavanso, Ajahn Sumedo, Ajahn Amaro, and so on. So I have synthesized the various instructions, and I will be giving you some instructions to practice Anapanasati. So let us begin by sitting here now and focusing on the fact that we are sitting here now. Be relaxed and get into a comfortable posture on whatever seat you're sitting on right now, with the body completely relaxed, the eyes gently closed, and start by taking a deep breath and hold this breath for a few seconds and release it slowly, while at the same time relaxing the body. So take a deep inhalation, hold it for a few seconds, and then exhale slowly while relaxing the body from head to toe. And then starting with your feet, notice the feet resting on the floor, and relax your feet completely. And come up gently towards your ankles, calves, your knees, thighs, the seated area, stomach, the chest, and go right up to the top of the head. Notice the subtle sensations on the top of your head. And relax your head completely. While staying upright. Notice the forehead where there is always tension, and relax. Relax round the eyes, the cheeks, the mouth. And then again, exhale slowly, going down both your arms and relaxing the arms completely. Notice the relaxed body and scan your body from head to toe. And notice the effect of the relaxed body on the mind. The mind which is in the present moment. So completely dispense of the past, which is a burden that we carry in our heads. Actually, I think of it like a refuse truck where the garbage is turning round and round. All the memories and hurts and issues we carry in our heads, and it keeps turning round and round, causing nothing but trouble. So dispense of the past completely, because the past is gone. Bring your attention to the present and dispense of the future as well, which causes anxiety. There's nothing you can do about the future at the moment, so dispense with that. Now notice the delightful nature of the relaxed body and the relaxed mind, and observe the breath as it goes in and comes out. Observe the most prominent place, be it the rise and fall of the stomach, or the up and down movement of the chest, or the air impinging on the nostril as it goes in and comes out. Observe that point of contact and simply observe the breath as it goes in and as it comes out. You are a total observer, not an actor. Think of yourself as someone sitting on a rock by the seaside and watching a wave as it comes in and as it goes out. It may be a long wave or a short wave. Just observe. This is total non-judgmental observation. If a thought springs to your mind, just think of it as thinking, thinking, thinking. If a sound disturbs you, simply think of it as hearing, hearing, hearing. Or if you get some feeling or a pain, think of it simply as a pain or a sensation, or simply as a feeling. So with that mode of non-judgmental observation, let us observe the in and out breathing process for the next few minutes. I will end this session by reciting a stanza, after which you can open your eyes. Bhavatu sabba mangalam rakkantu sabba devata sabba bhutanubhavena sada sukti bhavantu te. Bhavatu sabba mangalam rakkantu sabba devata sabba dhammanubhavena sada sukti bhavantu te. Avatu sabba mangalam rakkantu sabba devata sabba sanganubhavena sada sukti bhavantu te. Now you can gently open your eyes and remember that we've engaged in 5 minutes of meditation, mainly focusing on Anapanasati. And this is the very same meditation that Angulimala practiced 2,500 years ago, which enabled him to transform from a mass murderer into a fully enlightened being. Thank you. So now let us start the talk. And as explained, the subject of my talk is the Enigma of Angulimala. Before I start, I'd just like to make a request that those of you who are able to switch on to your video, if you can please click your video, then I will be able to see you and you can also see one another. And then your participation in this meeting will be enhanced because you are able to see the other participants, you are able to see the speaker, and therefore you have the impression of being connected to so many Dhamma friends. This is a beautiful thing that we are doing through this wonderful device we now have of Zoom. So as you know that this being able to see one another is a part of the international protocol that's followed for Zoom meetings. So thank you very much for those who have switched on to video. If you have a problem with that, that's fine. But if you can switch on and you can see one another, I think that's very nice. So getting on to the Enigma of Angulimala, the word Angulimala, which means necklace of fingers, brings fear and dread to the minds of Buddhists even 2,500 years after his demise. What baffles most people is how Angulimala, a mass murderer, became an arahat in the very lifetime in which he committed those heinous crimes. Can we, in our wildest imagination, conceive of mass murderers that we are familiar with today, such as Pol Pot, Hitler, or Prabhakaran, or Jack the Ripper for that matter, becoming an arahat? This is the enigma of Angulimala. To unravel this enigma, it is important to delve into the details of Angulimala's life and the infinite compassion of the Buddha towards all sentient beings, even a mass murderer. 2,500 years ago, during the time of the Buddha, in North India, in the realm of Pasanedi of Kosala, a Brahmin named Bhagavagagga and his wife Mantani gave birth to a son. This was a birth that was much awaited and was greeted with great joy and happiness. Bhagavagagga was well versed in the art of horoscope reading and soon cast his baby son's horoscope. To his horror, the horoscope reading indicated that his only child would become a criminal. Gagga was extremely distressed and decided to do all in his power to prevent such a prediction from coming true. He and his wife decided to name their son Ahimsaka, which means soft and gentle, and the one who embraces nonviolence. The parents made every effort to prevent the prediction coming true and emphasized to the child the importance of obedience and respect for elders. They thought that being obedient and following the direction of older and wiser persons, that would ensure that the boy would never steer away from good conduct and excellent behavior. Ahimsaka was a very intelligent boy and excelled in his studies. He followed the guidance of his teachers and came to the top of the learning opportunities that were available in his area. His teachers advised the parents to send Ahimsaka to Taxila, the seat of higher learning during that time. Now, if you have visited Taxila, you can even today see the relics of the Taxila University and all the Buddhist artifacts in that area. So in Taxila, it was customary for students to live in the Guru's house and receive their education. After worshipping his parents, Ahimsaka set off on his journey to Taxila. He was received by a renowned Brahmin who was the guru of a highly respected educational establishment. Soon, Ahimsa became the top student. In addition to his intelligence and good conduct, he was also humble and obedient. All these qualities endeared him to his teacher. Other students noticed this and soon became jealous of Ahimsaka. As time passed, their resentment increased. They plotted together to poison the teacher's mind against Ahimsaka. They hatched a plan, and each one in turn whispered into the teacher's ear that Ahimsaka, now a handsome young man, was having an affair with the teacher's young wife. At first, the teacher did not believe this. However, when one after another, each of his pupils said the same thing, the teacher became enraged and decided to take revenge on Ahimsaka. He called Ahimsaka and asked him about his loyalty to the teacher. Ahimsaka pledged his complete and unstinting loyalty and devotion to his teacher. By this time, the teacher's mind was so poisoned that he could not understand that Ahimsaka was truthful and that his other students were liars. The teacher said to Ahimsaka that he had completed his studies and that this was the time to repay the guru. Ahimsaka said that he was indeed so grateful to his teacher and that he would do anything within his power to repay his kindness and generosity. The teacher said that he should bring him a garland of 1,000 human fingers. He specified that it had to be the right thumb. Ahimsaka was shocked beyond belief, but the teacher confirmed his request. Ahimsaka's loyalty to the teacher and his blind and unquestioning obedience made him accept this task, which went against all reasoning. The teacher thought that after a few murders, the authorities would apprehend Ahimsaka and that he would receive the ultimate punishment for murder, which was the death penalty. Ahimsaka, saddened, shocked, and utterly confused by the teacher's request, left the teacher's abode, thinking how best he could fulfill this strange command. His unquestioning obedience to his teacher made him think that he had no choice but to obey the teacher's command. At first, he visited the charnel grounds where several dead bodies in various stages of decomposition were found. With great difficulty, he managed to cut off the right thumbs of dead bodies and string them together in a garland. But collecting 1,000 fingers became exceedingly difficult. Some of the fingers rotted and fell off. Others were attacked by vultures. By this time, his mind had become so deranged that he decided to wear his morbid garland of dead fingers round his neck to prevent the vultures from carrying them away. He was so obsessed and stupefied with his unquestioning loyalty and obedience to his teacher that he became insane and incapable of reason. Since collecting fingers from dead bodies was insufficient to fulfill the task of collecting 1,000 right thumbs, he started to apprehend people in lonely areas and kill them for their fingers. Ahimsaka was now a completely changed man. He was now a violent criminal whose good looks had changed into that of a violent and ferocious bandit. The garland of fingers that he wore around his neck earned him the name Angulimala. The bandit Angulimala became a notorious serial killer who could not be apprehended. He continued his killing spree with unrelenting single-mindedness. He spread fear and dread among the people of North India. Angulimala's ill fame finally got to his parents' ears. His father realized that the astrological prediction that he so dreaded and tried desperately to prevent had come true. But his mother, in disbelief and wishing to help her son, even at the risk of her own life, decided to go in search of him. Just at that time, Angulimala had collected 999 right thumbs. As people fled when he was sighted in an area, it became increasingly difficult for him to find this last finger. Suddenly, he remembered his mother. In his deranged state of mind, he thought that she alone would not run away at the sight of him and that it would be easy to kill her. While his mother started her journey in search of him, Angulimala in turn started his journey in search of his mother. Just at this time, the plight of Angulimala came within the purview of the Buddha's infinite compassion. The Buddha saw that Angulimala had the good karma and the potential to become an arahat, but that if he killed his mother, that this would not be possible, as the gravity of the karma would result in his having to spend an exceedingly long time in a woeful state of existence. Matricide and patricide, as you know, come under the category of a Garuka karma, which has to be repaid in every subsequent lifetime. The Angulimala Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya describes the Buddha's journey in search of Angulimala. As the Buddha neared the forest where Angulimala was sighted, the people stopped and said, "Do not take this road. The bandit Angulimala has been sighted in this area. Men in groups of 30 and 40 have fallen prey to Angulimala. Venerable sir, please do not take this road." A second and a third time, the people warned the Buddha, but the Buddha proceeded along the same road until he finally came to the forest. After walking in the forest, the Buddha came within sight of Angulimala. The latter spotted the Buddha approaching and thought to himself that this ascetic, who looked so serene and calm, would be easy prey, and started running towards the Buddha. The Buddha continued to walk, but Angulimala kept running. Finally, Angulimala thought, "Why can't I catch this ascetic? I am running, but he is walking." Then Angulimala stopped running and shouted to the Buddha and said, "Stop, stop." The Buddha replied, "I have stopped, but it is you that have not stopped." Angulimala was perplexed by this reply. It made him think. The words of the Buddha aroused his curiosity. He addressed the Blessed One in stanzas as follows. I'm quoting from the Angulimala Sutta. "While you're walking recluse, you tell me you have stopped. But now, when I have stopped, You say, I have not stopped. I ask you now, O recluse, about the meaning. How is it that you have stopped and I have not? Then the Buddha replied, Angulimala, I have stopped forever. I abstain from violence towards living beings, but you have no restraint towards things that live. That is why I have stopped and you have not. When Angulimala heard these words, it was as if a dark cloud that had shrouded his mind suddenly lifted. His mind became clear. He spoke thus, again I'm quoting, Oh, at long last this recluse, a venerated sage, has come to this great forest for my sake. Having heard your stanza teaching me the Dhamma, I will indeed renounce evil forever. The sutta further describes, and I'm quoting, so saying, the bandit took his sword and weapons and flung them into a gasping chasm spit. The bandit worshipped the Sublime One's feet and then and there asked for going forth. The Enlightened One, the sage of great compassion, the teacher of the world, addressed him with these words, come, bhikkhu, and that was how he became a bhikkhu. All that was quoted from the Angulimala Sutta, which is number 86 of the Majjhima Nikaya. Angulimala, with his head bowed, followed the Buddha to Sravasti, to Anathapindika's Jetha Grove. He donned the yellow robes and followed the Buddha. He undertook the precept of a monk and established himself in perfect sila and Indriya Sangvara sila and began practicing meditation under the direct guidance of the Buddha. In the meantime, the people of Savatthi got to know that Angulimala had taken refuge in Jetha monastery. Unable to understand this and fearing for their lives, a great crowd of people went in deputation to see the king, King Pasanedi of Kosala. They said, Sire, the bandit Angulimala is in your realm. He is murderous, bloody-handed, given to blows and violence, merciless to living beings. He is constantly murdering people and he wears their fingers as a garland. The king must put him down. The king immediately gathered an army of 500 men, replete with cavalry, and went on horseback to the Jetha Grove. He dismounted and proceeded towards the Buddha. He paid homage to the Buddha and sat down at a side. The Buddha saw the army and cavalry and asked the king, what is it, great king? Is King Seni of Bimbisara of Magadha attacking you? Or the Lichavis of Vesali or other hostile kings? Then the king explained the purpose of his visit and why he needed the support of his army and cavalry. The Buddha then asked, again I'm quoting from the Angulimala Sutta, great king, suppose you were to see that Angulimala had shaved off his hair and beard, put on the yellow robe, and gone forth from the home into the homelessness, that he was abstaining from killing living beings, from taking what is not given, and from false speech, and that he was eating only one meal a day, and was celibate, virtuous, and of good character. If you were to see him thus, how would you treat him? Then the king replied, Venerable sir, we would pay homage to him, invite him to accept robes, alms, food, etc. But Venerable sir, how could such an immoral man, one of evil character, ever have such a virtue and restraint? On that occasion, the Venerable Angulimala was sitting not far from the Blessed One. Then the Buddha extended his right arm towards Angulimala and said to the king, great king, this is Angulimala. King Pasanevi was alarmed and terrified, but the Buddha pacified him and said that he had no cause for alarm. Then the king's fear subsided, and he went over to Venerable Angulimala and asked, "Are you really Angulimala?" The latter replied, "Yes." Then the king asked about his parents, the details of his lineage, place of abode, etc. And Angulimala gave all the details because Angulimala's father had been a chaplain in the king's court. So the king knew him. So then Angulimala said, "My father is Bhargava, my mother is Mantani, etc." And the king identified them. The king then replied, "Let the noble Lord Bhargava Mantani Putra, that is son of Bhargava and Mantani, rest content." In other words, the king granted Angulimala an unequivocal pardon and offered to provide him with all the requisites of a monk. King Pasanevi then went up to the Buddha and said, "It is wonderful, Venerable Sir. It is marvelous how the Blessed One tames the untamed, brings peace to the unpeaceful, and lead to Nibbana those who have not attained Nibbana. Venerable Sir, we ourselves could not tame him with the force of weapons. Yet the Blessed One has tamed him without any force or weapons." Having said this, and after paying homage to the Buddha, the king departed. Now here we should note, we are in the 21st century, we should note here that King Pasanevi had a far more enlightened view of justice. Today, justice means revenge. If a person kills, then society considers that the murderer in turn should be killed by the state. This is the judicial equivalent of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But King Pasanevi, who was an absolute monarch and was the final arbiter of justice, considered that once the threat to the lives of his subjects was removed completely, and the offender was totally rehabilitated, in this case, with the personal guarantee of the Buddha himself, that the function of justice was carried out successfully. After receiving this pardon, Angulimala continued to practice meditation diligently under the guidance of the Buddha and soon overcame all defilements and attained the supreme bliss of Nibbana. This was his final redemption from the consequences of his evil acts. He brought the samsaric cycle to an end. His bad karma could not manifest itself in a rebirth. He was liberated. His karmic cycle became ahosi, or extinguished. However, in that present life, he had to experience the evil consequences of his actions. After becoming an arahat, when he was going on his arms round, a person threw a stick at him, another threw a stone, another threw a sharp object, another heavy clod, and all these objects hit him and caused severe injuries. Then, with blood running from his cut head, with his bowl broken, and with his robe torn, Angulimala went to the Blessed One. The Blessed One said, "Bear it, Brahmin, bear it. You are experiencing here and now the results of the deeds because of which you might have been tortured in hell for many years, for many hundreds of years, for many thousands of years." The Angulimala Sutta also describes that when Angulimala was on his arms round in Savatthi, he saw a woman in labor that was having a difficult delivery and was in great pain. On returning to the monastery, he asked the Buddha what he could do to help this woman. The Buddha said that Angulimala should go back and say to the woman, "Sister, Since I was born with the noble birth, that is after becoming a monk, I do not recall that I have ever intentionally deprived a living being of life. By this truth, may you be well and may your infant be well. Angulimala did as he was directed, and the woman was able to have a reasonably easy delivery. This is the beginning of the Buddhist tradition, which is practiced even today, of chanting the Angulimala Sutta to pregnant women just before their delivery. And I have to say here that when I had my 2 children, which was in the UK, I went to the London Buddhist Vihara 10 days before the delivery, and the monks chanted the Angulimala Sutta. And I have to say, I didn't have too much problems with delivery. Now, some of the words uttered by Angulimala when he experienced the bliss of Nibbana, I want to recite here because they are mentioned in the Dhammapada. Who once did live in negligence and then is negligent no more, he illuminates the world like the moon freed from a cloud. Then again, another verse, these are all in the Angulimala Sutta. I mean, if you have had it recited before childbirth, these are all in there. Conduit makers guide the water, fletchers straighten the arrow, carpenters straighten the timber, but wise men tame themselves. So welcome to that choice of mine, and let it stand. It was not ill-made. Of all the teachings resorted to, I have come to the very best. The Angulimala Sutta thus ends with the paeans of joy of enlightenment. Many of these stanzas, as I said, are found in the Dhammapada. Now, coming back to the Enigma of Angulimala, what is the Enigma of Angulimala? What baffles people when they read this story? Firstly, the request of the teacher to bring a garland of fingers is a baffling one. How can an erudite master make such an abhorrent request? This explains the depth to which a human mind can fall when driven by jealousy, hatred, and the desire for revenge. A man who is driven by jealousy will stop at nothing. As an English poet described, vengeance is sweet for the person who is consumed by it. The next perplexing question is why Angulimala, or Ahimsaka as he was then known, accede to such a request. He was intelligent and should have refused to carry out such an abhorrent request. Here we have to understand Angulimala's upbringing. From his small days, he was taught to be obedient to his elders. As a result of this conditioning process, he displayed unquestioning loyalty to his teachers. In today's world, we know that blind obedience is not a virtue. We know that illegal orders should not be carried out. Even in the army, where soldiers are expected to carry out orders without question, numerous examples exist where they were subsequently punished for carrying out illegal orders. The Nuremberg trials, where Hitler's henchmen were found guilty of mass murder, is a very glaring example of this. The one who gives the orders bears the greatest responsibility. Although the murders did not benefit Angulimala directly, he engaged in the act of killing through his own volition. Therefore, there was the karma of the act of killing. Ahimsaka's unquestioning loyalty and obedience was recognized by his teacher to be a weakness, which the latter exploited to the maximum. Also, Angulimala, when asked to repay the teacher for his services, promised that he would repay the teacher with whatever he requested. Then when the request was made, he could not break his promise. Then we come to the very important question. Having killed so many people, how could Angulimala attain enlightenment in that very life in which he committed all those atrocities? When analyzing the answer to this, it is important to understand that any event is governed or influenced by a complex of factors. The Buddha spoke of 5 factors. They are 1, Utu Niyama or environmental factors, 2, Bija Niyama or genetic factors, 3, Chitta Niyama or mental factors, 4, Dhamma Niyama or physical, biological, and all other natural laws, 5, Kamma Niyama or karmic forces. Angulimala was able to attain enlightenment in the very same life in which he committed his crimes because of several reasons. One is he was blessed with enormous good karma from his past lives, and he had the potential to become an arahat. So that's karma niyama. The good karma was very strong. And secondly, Angulimala had the good fortune to be born during the time of the Buddha. That's Utu Niyama. He was fortunate that he came within the purview of the Buddha's infinite compassion. In other words, the Buddha, having seen Angulimala's potential for enlightenment, rescued him before he committed the Garuka karma of killing his own mother. Had he killed his mother, the weight of that karma would have been so bad that he would not have been able to attain enlightenment in that lifetime. In other words, he would have had to spend the rest of his sansaric existence paying for it. Once he attained enlightenment, his bad karma became ahosi, that is, it was negated by bringing rebirth to an end. Therefore, the resultant bad karma of killing so many people had no opportunity to manifest itself in a future birth in a woeful state of existence. Of course, on several occasions, one occasion of which I described earlier, even as an arahat, when he went on his arms round, he was beaten and suffered grievous injuries. But the rebirth consequences were averted. The Buddha said that had Angulimala not become an arahat, that he would have had to endure thousands of lives in misery. Another mystifying aspect of the Angulimala story is how he was exonerated and redeemed despite committing so many crimes. It is difficult for us to understand how a criminal, having committed so many murders, could become a monk. Here, we need to understand the Buddha's infinite and unbound compassion. His compassion knew no bounds. It was extended alike to all sentient beings, regardless of any consideration. The beggar, the prostitute, the king, criminal, the good, the bad, and the ugly, all came within the purview of Buddha's infinite compassion. Angulimala was born during the Buddha's lifetime and lived in North India at that time and came within the Buddha's purview. Each morning, the Buddha surveyed the world to see who was in need of help. On that fateful morning, when Angulimala was about to kill his own mother, the Buddha's compassion fell on Angulimala. It is because the Buddha realized that Angulimala had the potential to become enlightened in that lifetime that he went to his rescue. There were others whom the Buddha could not help. The Buddha could not help the pig slaughterer who lived near the vicinity of Jetavanarame, as he knew that he would not benefit from the Dhamma. But despite his criminal record, the Buddha knew that Angulimala had the capacity to attain enlightenment. When the Buddha said, "I have stopped," although Angulimala perceived that he was traveling faster than himself, Angulimala's chitta niyama, his intelligence and mental factors, also came into operation. He understood the words of the Buddha. In this day and age, it is inconceivable for us to imagine that a mass murderer could be pardoned without having to spend even one day in prison. In today's administration of justice, a jury would find Angulimala guilty of mass murder, and he would receive concurrent maximum sentences for each of the murders. However, during the time of the Buddha, as I mentioned earlier, the ultimate source of justice was the king. The king had the power to exonerate a criminal. The Buddha ordained Angulimala before he was caught by the king and his army. The king was only able to confront Angulimala after he became a monk. In granting him a pardon, King Pasenadi exercised great magnanimity and compassion, based on the understanding that a monk ordained by the Buddha and following the Vinaya would be impeccable in conduct and perfect in sila. Also, King Pasenadi would have appreciated that it was blind obedience that led Angulimala to commit such crimes. A defense lawyer today may have pleaded insanity or diminished responsibility. Another enigmatic aspect of Angulimala is how he could meditate with so much blood on his hands. Many people living quite impeccable lives find it difficult to meditate or concentrate when they engage in that activity. Angulimala's previous good karma and the direct influence of the Buddha helped him. It is said that the Buddha was able to look into a person's mind as well as his karmic legacy and prescribe a subject of meditation to suit that person's mental and psychological disposition. Angulimala benefited from receiving meditation instructions directly from the Buddha. The twin factors of his own good karma plus the benign influence of the Buddha helped Angulimala. In this regard, it is also important to understand that Buddhism does not advocate repentance. Feelings of guilt are not encouraged. Rather, one is encouraged to accept one's wrongdoing, make a firm determination not to repeat it, and to move on. Pondering over it and repenting is like keeping a festering wound open. Buddhism teaches one to live in the present moment, not in the past or in the future. The cardinal principle of mindfulness practice is the requirement to dispense with the past. Angulimala would have been successful in being able to delete the horrific memory of his life as a serial killer from his mind and live in the present moment. In karmic terms, Angulimala was like a lotus on the surface of the water. When the rays of the glorious sun falls on it, it blossoms forth into a beautiful flower. Similarly, when the glorious influence of the Buddha fell on Angulimala, his defilements fell away. Being a good student, he followed the meditation instructions carefully. His mind became calm and clear. He realized the Four Noble Truths and attained the supreme bliss of Nibbana. The story of Angulimala is also important to us as it has many lessons that we can draw which are of great relevance today in the 21st century. The entire saga of Angulimala began in the minds of Ahimsaka's fellow students. The Buddha Dhamma focuses on the importance of the mind. The Dhammapada starts with the stanza, Mano Pubbangama Dhamma, Mano Pubba Mano Maya. Mind is the forerunner of all things good and evil. In this instance, the mental defilement of jealousy gripped the minds of Ahimsaka's fellow students. Ahimsaka was top of the class and the teacher's favorite, etc. And his fellow students, instead of being joyful at Ahimsaka's success, they became jealous. As we know, jealousy is one of the worst defilements. The Buddha said that it eats and consumes the person whose mind is filled with jealousy. Buddha likened jealousy to a rust that destroys the very person who is jealous. The jealous students wanted to destroy Angulimala and concocted a story about Ahimsaka committing adultery with the teacher's wife. The students succeeded in infecting the guru with the poison of jealousy. From this, we can infer that the guru was not so wise after all. He did not engage in any independent verification, but jumped to the conclusion that Ahimsaka was guilty. The seed of jealousy found fertile ground in the guru's head, and we know what happened after that. This story has relevance in today's 21st century society, where jealousy is rampant. In Sri Lankan schools, the competitive system that prevails is a breeding ground for jealousy. Jealousy prevails in all corners of society, so much so that a senior and erudite monk recently remarked that jealousy is a national disease. The story of Angulimala is a lesson for people who harbor thoughts of jealousy. As Buddhists, what we have to practice is the opposite of jealousy, that is mudita, rejoicing in the joys of others. We need to, I think that just as much as we have incorporated other precepts, like when we recite Musavada, we say Parusavacha, Pisunavacha, Samprappalapa, Veramani, Sikkapadan Samadhi. I think that we in the 21st century has to incorporate a new precept, Irshavada, Veramani, Sikkapadan Samadhi. And I think that should be taught to children because schools are a hotbed of jealousy. I'm sorry to say. So in conclusion, I would like to say that the story of Angulimala is an important one. It is an account of a criminal becoming a saint. It is an inspiration to us that despite all odds, that every human being has the potential for enlightenment. In this short life, the greatest achievement is the attainment of enlightenment. A human life is wasted if no effort is made towards this end. I will conclude on that note. And I would like to welcome questions.
Thank you, Anoja. Thank you so very much for that wonderful presentation.